Richie Kotzen here at Fender, checking out the Fender Tone Master Twin Reverb. What I look for in an amp is something that's basically going to make it easier for me to do what it is that I do. So as a musician, I hear things, I feel things, and I'm reacting, and I kind of, I look at it as sort of as if there were a bridge between me and the instrument, and that's kind of like my being that allows me to play without thinking about it. So when the amp comes into the equation, the simplicity is the word I would use. I need something that makes it very easy for me to get what's happening here through the speaker with limited distractions. I need to be able to look at the amp and know, okay, there's the volume, treble, middle, bass, and I can understand how to manipulate that. But beyond that, the design of the amp for me has to reflect how I'm responding as a musician. So if I'm playing quiet, I want the amp to respond accordingly. If I dig in, I need the amp to respond as well. So there's a headroom issue there. I don't favor amps that kind of squash my sound and compress it, so to speak. So I just need an amp that's simple to use, simple to understand, and doesn't really color what's happening with my fingers and my mind when I'm playing. With my love for tube amps, there's also a price that I've paid because I do a lot of touring, a lot of traveling, and things can happen on the road that are beyond your control when you have so many parts, delicate parts, especially vintage amplifiers. And so I've been in many situations where, amps would go down or, and it's either a tube or a transformer or what have you. So, the biggest drawback from using that kind of gear is, eventually something can go down and fail because just by nature of how it's built. And then if you're someone that has to lug stuff around, like if you're doing local gigs or something like that, there's nothing fun in carrying around a big, heavy, 410 combo or a heavy 212 combo or, God forbid, a 412 cabinet or a 100-watt head with a big power transformer. So, moving that stuff around can be taxing. So the way I usually set up, I tend to like amplifiers that are loud and clear and that break up nice when they hit a certain volume. So that can be kind of tricky because to get the amp to sound that way, it has to be, sometimes it ends up being louder than what would be ideal for the room you're in. So at that point, I to compensate, would lean on my pedals. And personally, I use one pedal. It's called a fly rig. And it has an overdrive in it and a boost, and it has some other features as well. So I would set this pedal up so that it would break up nicely in front of the amp, and then there's a second stage to the pedal where I can get more of a singing lead tone. But as far as it relates to my setup, in the earlier days, I would depend on having an amp provide most of the gain. So it would have to be really, really loud. And then later on, my playing style changed. So I actually started playing with a lot less gain. So then I started gravitating towards amplifiers, such as a Twin, for example, that were louder, more percussive, and had a lot of headroom. And I found that to be a little more rewarding. As far as what this is, it looks like a normal Fender Twin, but really what it is it's an all-digital replication of a Fender Twin. And so the thing that I love about it is that it is a digital amp, but it looks like a normal amp. So the first thing that happens is I turn it on, I plug it in, I know what I'm gonna do. I know what now I'm gonna turn, and I know what I think it's gonna sound like, because I'm used to this amp. And so it's really emulating, to perfection. It's emulating an all-tube Fender Twin like I've never heard a digital amp do before. And even to the point where when you listen to a clean chord in the sustain, you're, at least in my mind, I'm hearing those harmonic overtones that I usually would only hear with a tube amp. And then one of the nice things about it, there's an attenuator on the back. So like in the old days, I would have a Marshall Plexi, and I'd turn it all the way up, and I'd use an attenuator to bring the volume back. Well, this has a feature very much like that. So if you wanted to turn this all the way up to 10, you could roll back the attenuator and get a broken up Fender Twin at a volume that wouldn't rip your head off. And then the other thing that I love about it, for someone that's into the sound of a Fender Twin, if I were to do local gigs, this is the ultimate amp to throw in the back of my car, because I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to wreck the place, but I could lift this up and swing it over my head if I wanted to. It's super light, and as everybody knows, the real tube version of this amp is, you have to carry it around like this. So it's pretty neat stuff. The amp offers an XLR output, which is excellent for recording because it will emulate the sound of a microphone in front of the speaker. And so that comes in handy. Even if you are in a situation where you can mic the amp, you have another option to get another tonal perspective. So what I would do is I would mic the amp pretty much like it is here, and take a line out from the XLR and record that as well, just to have it, because you can do some interesting things in blending and when it comes time to mix or layering your guitars. And then on the other hand, where that comes really in handy is, again, it applies to people that are, well, not only people that are doing, I was thinking about club gigs, but even bigger gigs. You could use that to get a totally isolated sound from stage. So if you have a loud stage, or maybe you have a stage with a lot of instrumentation and there's a lot of microphones and what have you around, and there's bleed coming through, you can take the direct XLR out right to the PA, and it will basically emulate, a situation like you see here. So that's a great feature as well. I think almost any kind of player could benefit from an amp like this. Super light, and if you're like me and you still care about what things look like, it still looks like a normal amp. And that appeals to me, because when I approach the amp to get a sound out of it, I don't want to deal with a learning curve. I don't want to have to look at a manual and program and press a button and wait for a flashing light, and that kind of stuff is just maddening to me. So here we have, an all-digital amp, but it still functions like the same amp that I grew up with. I like the simplicity of it. And so I think any player that is looking for an amp that's easy to get a tone out of, versatile in the sense that they may be living somewhere where they can't play too loud, so they want to roll back the volume without sacrificing tone, you can do that. Even in the recording element with the direct out and the speaker emulation. I think it's one of the most versatile amps on the planet in its original form, and now it's still one of the most versatile amps on the planet. It's just modernized, it's lighter, it's more reliable, and it's just a happier, friendlier amp.